Hello, Beth. All right. So here we are, all from home.
How are you guys feeling?
I'll let other people answer that. How are you feeling, Valto?
I'm feeling okay. We have just moved our entire family to work from home, the kids from school, the wife, myself. So here we are actively homeworking, but everyone doing what they're supposed to be doing, but just doing it from home. So getting used to the new routines.
Tiffany, can your husband work from home?
No, well, kind of. So he's in IT at a local university, and so they're working on helping everyone else be able to work from home. And I think once that transition happens, then he'll be able to do a lot remotely, because people just won't be there for him. He's desktop support. So for him, it's been kind of a nightmare for the last week or so. I think Arkansas is a little behind other states, since it seems like it's been coming from, West Coast and East Coast, like coming in, and we're sort of in the middle. But I've been able to work from home, and so that's really good. I'm grateful.
That's good. How are your kids doing?
They're fine. I'm a little frazzled. Like Balto said, I'm not used to homeschooling, and the work that they sent home is so work. I have such a renewed appreciation for our teachers. So much work, but that's if that's the most I have to complain about, then we're doing just fine.
I have a friend. Hi all. I have a friend of mine who's a teacher in the UK, and she's actually offered to. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. She's actually offered to provide guidance to parents who are trying to organize learning activities at home. So it's kind of a nice idea.
I think that's great. Oh, go ahead, Cecilia.
Go ahead. Oh no, I was going to tell Peter there's a bunch of online resources that we've been collecting. I don't know if you're on Facebook, Peter, but there seems to be a repository of things that are on there. I'm happy to share in the chat.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, everybody in our families elsewhere. I mean, we're grandparents, so I don't have to worry about that. But although I think my daughter with her 6-year-old and 3.5-year-old, I think that the kids are going to be sleeping in hammocks in the trees by the time this thing is over. So I've also told people that if we run out of food here, that the squirrel population around our house is going to greatly decrease.
So maybe we'll finish popcorning around about how everybody's doing. Beth, how are you doing over there? You're unmuted, but I don't hear you. You can go to Mike.
Hello.
Hello.
We're doing okay. The reality for many people is that days are suddenly different scales than they used to be, and different kinds of focus. Yeah, my wife Kara has Monday chemo treatments, which again, the timing is not great. And this Monday, for the first time, I was not allowed to join her. And they've said that they might be moving chemo to a remote location, and they might have to halt them altogether, depending. So they're just monitoring the situation in other countries and trying to use that as the best guide they have. They said we have no data on what that's like. So this is totally uncharted territory for everybody, and and everybody's dealing with their own versions of what that means for them. So yeah, all that considered, we're doing what we can with the boys at home and trying to just get by on the one hand and also stay productive when we have the illusion that that's possible. So that's where we're at.
Go ahead and popcorn, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Sure. Beth, are you good to go?
Heard you.
Sure. What, did I jump on top of somebody though?
Nope.
Okay.
You have been popcorn too.
Okay. All in all, I'm doing good. Of course, our much awaited trip to the islands has been postponed indefinitely. My husband works in a union here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and his job has been eliminated, but he can move into another job based on his seniority. So just all kinds of unexpected things popping up left and right every day. So somebody else said it, unprecedented times. We just gotta take one moment at a time and roll with it and do what we can to stay healthy and keep others healthy, right? I will is Hassan on? I'll popcorn over to him.
He's not. We've got Eric and Andy who haven't gone yet.
Okay, hi guys. I'll popcorn over to Eric.
Yeah, hey folks. Let's see. I rarely have a chance to join this call, so good to be here. See some faces. Troubling times. And I'm not sure what the initial question was. How are we arriving? A lot of different calls online. So I poked in or was part of a couple different 1 Million Cups things this morning. Iowa City and here in Albuquerque. Just seeing from the good side, seeing a lot of people pull together to share resources and really try and help each other out. So I'll leave it at that. Oh, and is Andy, are you the last person standing? Andy.
Here I am. Hello, everyone. I got to make this joke every call. Welcome to Between Two Ferns. I will try to be funny, like Zach Galifianakis. I had to move some plants to try to make this because I was like, oh man, my house does not have any good Zoom backdrops. So there's a startup for somebody. Zoom backdrops by order, mail order. I was thinking like White House backdrop, a beach backdrop. I could just pull them down. Anyway, how am I doing? I vacillate between feeling very unsettled on balance. I find that's mostly when I'm scrolling through social media. So the tip I've given myself is to stop doing that so much. On the flip side, and I gotta say this the right way. I am cautiously eager and optimistic about our work because as I watch things break down, I think ecosystem leadership and entrepreneurial ecosystem building is the answer to a lot of the challenges that we're facing right now. I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna because obviously I'm a little biased, but someone said to me a couple months ago that ecosystem building is an idea whose time has come. And I think that the core ideas of what we're talking about, whether that means entrepreneurial ecosystem building or just systems leadership that lead to more collaboration to focus on our communities and our economies, that's how you define it, is actually the answer to a lot of the things that we need right now and will be the things that help us recover from all of the impacts of the current crisis. Now let's deal with the current crisis and let's get that figured out. But if I take my long-term hat and think longer out, I recognize that we have been supporting people who've been building the infrastructure in their communities that will be able to do the necessary collaboration that's going to help communities recover. I think a lot of the work of this group in terms of building the support structures to support those people, i.e. the professional field of ecosystem building. I really wish we were a little further along for a lot of reasons in the sense that people are going to need this stuff more and more than need it now. And it actually really is encouraging to me. And if I'm not looking at social media and I'm just thinking about how this is going to play out, I actually get kind of excited around the ecosystem building professional field and the work of all the people that we're supporting through the ESHIP Summit, all the work that you all are doing in your communities. It actually gets me pretty fired up because getting people's attention out of it about ecosystem building outside of the early adopters has been one of the challenges of my individual work, and probably yours as well. And sometimes in the places that are getting it somehow got a kick in the pants. This is a really big kick in the pants for like every community across the globe. And so I am actually eager to see how we can all support folks doing the work. I don't want to sound again like a Pollyanna because I think I'm trying to, I think there's a lot of hard stuff ahead, but I'm actually eager to see how we can all help and work together to be able to figure out what comes after the crisis has been calmed.
Actually, Celia, I noticed you joined already, but I just started this morning. I launched a listserv, sort of dealing with the same question that Andy's raising, which is, so what comes after? You know, everybody's focusing on today's emergency, and as people should. Where I think folks could make an interesting, we could be, at least in my circle of people, could be making an interesting contribution is if we start to sort of tease out what comes next. And your point about ecosystem building is one. But I think that there are going to be some permanent changes that come out of this. Mm-hmm. I can't predict what they are, but I think we can anticipate where they may be in the terms of who gets affected. You know, for instance, in the hospitality industry, there's going to be a lot of demand for restaurants. I don't know if anybody's going to have any capital to reopen the restaurant or to restart their restaurant or to start a new one. So there's going to be some real changes here. And so what I did this morning was I said, okay, fine, let's get some conversation going. Mm-hmm. And we could do that through an email listserv. And if something comes out of it in terms of ideas and projects and things like that, that's great. I have no specific expectation as to what might happen other than let's just throw it up there and see what comes out of it in terms of conversation. So I know, Andy, I sent you an invite. And everybody else in this group, if you want to be part of it, I'll be glad to invite you in it. The only ground rule is be civil, and that everything is amongst just the people we're talking. So, you know, don't go advertising and say, did you see what Andy said? And, you know, copy and paste and put it on some social media. So that's really the basic ground rule. So.
Yeah, I think we're not tweeting everything. Thank you, Peter, for doing that. I think there's a lot that's been emerging. Katie, the question is, how are you arriving today, or how are you doing?
I guess I should unmute first. I'm actually doing pretty good. We are, I'm encouraging all of the people in our network to look at this as, you know, these are the best of times, these are the worst of times kind of thing. Of course, the worst of times because this virus is shutting down our economy. The best of times because all those things that you complained about never having time to do, you now have time to do. So we can take a social distance, but not social isolation stance. All those people you wanted to write to didn't have time to, all the people you should have called you didn't have time to, the online training you thought you wanted to take but didn't have time to, the closet full of junk. I mean, all of that stuff is now you have time. So it's the worst of times, yes, it's the best of times. And also there's that whole opportunity to innovate and disrupt old technologies and old processes, because this is going to force us to look at things very differently than the way we've looked at them. One of the things I'm hoping will come out of this is that we will stop making broadband access a class issue in this country, that it should be treated like a utility. Now, I'm dating myself when I say that for most of my childhood, I lived in a house that didn't have a toilet, so we used an outhouse. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But if you told somebody in North Carolina now that you didn't have a toilet in your house, they would say, what? Where are you living? Are you living in our state? And we're finding that even in one of the most prosperous counties in the state where I live, that there are kids who can't do their homework because they don't have broadband access. So I've got people calling me saying, you know, can a community college help? What do you know about that we can help these students? So that's one of the things I'm hoping will come out of this. That, you know, and also, you know, our leaders can't implement the types of solutions they'd like to because they have to account for the fact that everybody doesn't have access, right? So the people who drag their feet about solving this problem are now being hurt by the fact that they drag their feet by not solving this problem. So I'm trying to look at it both ways. Everybody in my family seems to be doing well. I don't have any symptoms. I'm in touch with them daily. And so overall, you know, I'm okay. I got back from the grocery store and I was able to buy toilet paper. So that's me.
Maybe coming to visit you.
Yeah, come on.
I
got space. My cats don't mind company.
Toilet paper.
Who
Toilet
else
paper
had gone?
make an outhouse more tolerable.
Yeah, I don't have an outhouse anymore, guys. I do have toilets now.
Yeah, I've got to figure out. I'm on my way to the grocery store after this call, so or after the next call that I have. But I just got back from Texas, and I figured I might as well have stayed in Texas because there are just as many cases here or more than where I was. But I was
Did you
fortunate.
fly?
Huh?
Did you
No,
fly?
I drove actually.
Okay.
So I was, and where I'm coming from, before I turn it over to the other facilitators, I just got off of a global call with some impact makers from the Future Agro Challenge, and I was reminded that that people in other parts of the world are experiencing this, and they're like, yeah, it's a big deal, but we've been through this before and we'll be okay. My friend in Serbia said, I've lived through 2 wars in my lifetime and had, you know, the blackouts where you have to go home at 6 or 8 o'clock or whatever and not allowed on the streets. So it's not as big a thing. And so they're used to having networks where they check on each other and do all the things that they need to do. And so there's a lot we can learn from them. One of them is on lockdown in Spain and Greece and all these other places. So they're like, yeah, we'll be okay. But the underlying message that I keep hearing from them is the importance of looking out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to share that out, and your neighbors and people who aren't able to get out. So there's that. I'm going to turn it over to Mike and Tiffany and Valdo to think about the vision and the work that we really need to focus on getting done too.
Thanks, Cecilia. There's a few things that have been in the works. It's been an active Slack channel, which is great. I wonder if we could start, Andy, if you wouldn't mind just giving an update on what some of that discussion has been, specifically just around the potential for asking participants at a session that I know we're still wondering what exactly the nature of ESHIP is going to be, but
Yeah.
But just the move to ask a very large number of people.
Totally. So I'm gonna let Beth start, because I think for those of you who were not on the last call, just I think to level set where we left. Goal 3 call has sort of decided to organize itself as a project team. The specific project we're working on is to basically deliver a draft vision for the field, emphasis on the word draft, using input from the past 3 ESHIP summits and any other things that we can gather in different ways, so that folks at the next ESHIP summit can help respond, give input, and will help us develop some consensus around a vision for the emerging professional field of entrepreneurial ecosystem building. I believe we also left it as that Hassan and Beth were going to sort of step up and help be our project leads or corrallers for the folks on this team to make sure that we could deliver something at the summit. I will talk about the summit in just a moment, but I actually want to give it over to Beth in case she, because I know her and Hassan have been planning and talking and discussing, and we've had obviously some back and forths about logistics with the summit. What I can really provide and what I'm willing to share as an asset related to this project is this, that obviously there's a summit we have to have. Hopefully it will be on the dates that we planned, obviously pending all the current COVID stuff. And I have a little bit of an update in terms of what I think that's going to look like and how it's going to play out. But I'll turn over to Beth to hear what she and Hassan are thinking.
Thanks, Andy. And Hassan is going to be on. He's on a Forward Cities call that went over, he said. But I don't know if, I'm assuming you guys are following the Slack conversation. And I think my understanding of our goal is that we want to have, like Andy said, this a draft vision statement that the project team is comfortable with, and Andy and everybody is comfortable with at ESHIP to present to the masses at the summit. And so Andy has volunteered to add a question to the summit registration, and we were charged or asked to come up with a question to add, and actually Andy came up with the right question. And we confirmed that that was the right question this week. And here it is. So the question that's going to be added is, do you have it right there? I'm sorry.
Paste it.
I got it. Oh, you got
Has a
it.
strong
I think
opinion.
this is it. I think this is the one we sort of settled on. The idea was one way we could get a lot of input from a lot of folks that's in the current contemporary moment, because we have a lot of input from the last 3 summits, is this question. I don't know if you're on, Beth. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll give me to read it. In a few words, what is the ultimate end goal of your work to support entrepreneurs in your community?
Something's happening.
Oh, did everyone hear that? Did I break up?
Yeah, I think you broke up.
Okay. It says, in a few words, what is the ultimate end goal of your work to support entrepreneurs in your community? The idea is that anyone that registers for the summit would be asked this question. And then Beth, you can talk about what you were thinking we could do with that input.
Well, when it comes in, and that was the question I had for you, Andy, is what's the timing?
It's a plan. Yep.
So when we do get that information back, we can call through it and help add that to and hopefully the initial draft that we've already put together. And looking at the sandbox document, that the link is in the agenda from this morning that Celia sent along. Some people have done a little bit of work in reviewing it and making comments. There were a couple of vision-like statements in my mind anyways that I pulled out of there that I thought are great places potentially to start. I don't see where anything new has been added in that space. Is everybody there? Or Celia, could you share screen share?
I just put it into the chat, the sandbox. Okay, and let me see if I can screen share. I can do that. Hang on.
So while you're trying to do that, the couple of things that I pulled out of there were, one was empowering ecosystems to unleash potential of humans and enterprise to make the world more prosperous for all. There you go.
Okay. So is it down at the bottom?
No, it's at the top.
Or it's in your note? Okay. Here, hold on. Sorry. Let me see. Okay. How's that? Empowering ecosystems to unleash the potential of humans and enterprise to make the world more prosperous for all, and assessing and aligning communities towards collective action that improves social and economic vitality.
So would you say that second one is more of a mission statement, or are they both?
I feel like the first one was vision, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think they're
there's again so many different ways to approach mission and vision statements. I'll just say that personally, I love a vision statement that describes what that world is like when you've done what you say you're doing. And to me, these are sort of the things that we're doing. If there's a way to phrase these or talk about these as kind of an end state, then that a really succinct way of describing that end state in a few words, ideally, is a really powerful vision statement. So to me, at this point, we're gathering elements and trying to figure out what might be essential to what a vision statement would be. So anyway, that's my take on where those are.
Mike, you had said a really interesting thing in the Slack channel, which I'm going to go back to. I'll just read it. I'm just going to find it. That I thought maybe you could just double click on, essentially. You said, for further thought, part of the challenge will be getting people out of their individual frames and into a collective one, and sufficiently out of today's reality and metrics and into something really visionary. So something towards questions like, how will you know we have succeeded, et cetera. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Responding to that conversation, because I think it's really interesting points.
And it's, you know, part of it is the question of what do you get out of somebody talking about what their goal is now and what they're working on now. So that first question, it's great because it connects to what people are actually working on. The thing to just be aware of, and again, a little careful of as you're asking a question for input, is, are you asking something that's going to make people in their head go to, here's my daily work today. And very often daily work today is not necessarily always, especially at scale across the field, not necessarily pointing to even an aggregate, that thing you're all trying to get to, which might be a leap. And the things we're working on today, while they all might be great and they all might be building toward that, it's hard to see that other thing sometimes from the work that you yourself are focusing on today and your own goals in that. There's no doubt that it's valuable input, and when you aggregate those things, you start to get a sense of like a vector that everybody might be heading toward. Again, the power of a vision sometimes is that it might take you off the current vector that everybody's on across something and into something new. So, and that's those 2 points exactly, Andy, is, you know, sometimes individual focus points end up overlapping so much that they don't give that new vision that is actually maybe really powerful. So how do we move the question into something that maybe is in some way a leap from what people are doing in their day-to-day? And also if we want it to be a collective vision, what's a collective vision instead of possibly the sum of the parts, which again might be different. And so to me, the challenge is, because I think it's really valuable to understand what is everybody actually, you know, what's the aggregate of what everybody's working on today? What are we actually pointing toward? I think that's super valuable input for a vision. The really powerful exercise also is to get people out of that mode of what am I focused on every day and where does that seem to be pointing? And instead a leap to what's the thing we all actually want to try and get to. And that's, you know, we've done lots of backcasting exercises for a reason. It's to let yourself step out of your current reality that you observe, because we all have, you know, hangups in our brain that say whatever's been the path so far is likely to continue. And we've certainly all had a very real world experience over the last month, maybe, that's not the case. So how do we leap out of today's conditions and start to see something new? So to the extent that a question can do that, it might be valuable, again, potentially to do both if we can, if that's possible.
So Mike, I think that's great. I think the tension that you always run into here is you have the reality of day-to-day life, that people are, you know, pushing things out the door, they're setting up meetings, they're doing this and the other thing. And connecting those series of individual daily activities to a long-term, here's where I'm going, is tough. And we tend to try to do that. And I was looking at the two things here, empowering ecosystems and so forth, with those sort of process points, those process suggestions. But that's really hard to operationalize. And it's even harder to connect day-to-day activities to that down the road vision. Particularly if you've got, let's say you're working in economic development and you're reporting to a mayor, and the mayor is saying, what did you do for me today? And, to come back and say, well, I've been ecosystem building is hard to explain, but you need to live that reality and still in your own mind know that that's what you're getting to. And I'm having a hard time figuring out how that bridge works.
I'll give a quick, thanks Peter, since you asked, I'll give my frame for that. Lots of people always talk about, the moon as being one of the more powerful visions. We're going to put someone on the moon and bring them back within this much time. The work that people were doing at the time, even the work that happened after they might have acknowledged that vision and said, that's what we're doing. None of it individually, probably, or very little of it would feel like it was actually building up to that. It would be lots of, smaller exercises, lots of solving problems, figuring out what happens if we put A and B together, what kind of C's can we get out of that. But there's tremendous power in saying, hey, what we're all doing, we may not see it, but what we're all doing together is trying to get to the moon and back. And so as a vision, that the link is almost more conceptual than real, and having a vision that everybody agrees to that holds something together culturally is incredibly powerful. To me, the mission is where you start to say, here's the things that we're actually doing to achieve this thing. Having buy-in and alignment and trust across a community that actually this thing I'm doing does eventually lead up to that is not easy. But to me, that's the power of the difference between what a vision is doing and how it functions, and then the mission and how people can link into that. So again, just my take.
No, and it's a good one. The difference between the moon metaphor and what we're trying to do is that the moon metaphor, it was a top-down process. Somebody said, this is what we're going to do, is John Kennedy or whatever, and this is what we're going to do. We're all going to put our resources in that direction. So you're right, everybody who has had a little piece of it, may not necessarily know what that little piece was doing to the big thing, but there was some coordinating process where all those inputs were being put together. What we're talking about is something that's far more bubble up. And so it's more of a cultural, social, we buy into it and we're all going to kind of run in that same direction thing, but not necessarily without having the advantage of anybody sort of coordinating it from the top. And
yeah, I think what I've understood we're trying to do is sort of through this process, try and create our own mandate for that. And through the process of building it together with this community, trying to get to enough of something that it's owned across, not because we're all employed or reporting the same eventual head of something, but rather through kind of this collective accountability and saying, yeah, enough of us have had hands on this and trust in what this statement is or what this vision is, that we all say, yep, that's our thing. Obviously, it's been an interesting sort of creative tension between Kauffman and the community of trying to say, to what degree does Kauffman lead and start to, plant something that becomes a point that people can rally to, versus how much are they supporting and saying, you all take the lead and go forth with this. I think that's what we're trying to kind of navigate here, but I think it's a great point.
So where do we go from here?
I have some questions or thoughts if you like to hear from the perspective of just trying to, I missed the last call and I have a couple of points in regards to these goals. Like we all identify, I guess, that individual words matter a lot. And that's why we try to do crafting of the words to put them in order. But then if we also look at some of the words that are being used. Like Andy knows very well that I have thoughts about ecosystem builder. So first of all, it kind of represents, like we use term developer because it kind of is a word meaning that it's never ended. It already existed when we started, and we can only develop it. And when we leave, someone else will continue. So it's not something that we built. This is where it's coming from. The other thing is like the vision seems more difficult, and I fully agree. I like visions that have an end goal. Like, how does success look like? Like, if we get there, how does it look like? That's the vision. But does it end anywhere? Like, that's the question. In my mind, this is a more kind of an ongoing thing. It's never going to be complete. So the question then comes that the mission seems more relevant. Why do we do what we do? And that can have, the mission can include, of course, that we improve something, or we want something to exist more, and whatever we do is to make things better, is basically, but it will never be complete. So this is what kind of I think from the terminology, that the mission as a goal for everyone seems more relevant, because then the risk with the vision is that it should be very tangible. It should be achievable. Like going to the moon and bringing people back is, achievable. But what happens after that? It's done and it's done. So then these are kind of the things that I consider here, is that what serves the purpose better? The shared mission that doesn't end, but that has something built in, that has an output, or a thing that we built and then it's done. And this is just for the words, nothing to what the statement would look like or nothing like that. This is just the words that are being used now. So I'm just kind of throwing that in there. How does it like fit into your minds?
Well, once we set up the profession, once the profession is a credible profession, that's done, right? But the ecosystem building work can never be done. So do we want to think more about the end state of the profession being established and the mission being the ecosystem building work that needs to continue?
I think that's an excellent question. I think definitely those two should not be mixed accidentally or intentionally.
I'll just chime in to say that that's not, I mean, I get how important that is, but that's not why I do this. So that really does not excite me or energize me. It's a vision of something where, we have these more resilient communities, resilient ecosystems. That's the thing that, gets me up in the morning and puts me on calls. Having a field that works and enables that, very important. But to me, that doesn't really do much for me as a vision.
Agreed. I'm just trying to, I guess, pinpoint some things that we can establish as things to get an ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we can be very excited about the ultimate goal and not necessarily excited about the hard work and the gritty steps that it takes to get there, but we still have to do them. And I agree with Beth. I think that establishing ecosystem building, entrepreneurial ecosystem building as a profession, as a respected profession, just like project management certification, marketing certification, all those things, because it raises the profile of the work that we do, it is one of those steps that we have to take in order to be able to reach the ultimate goal. As long as people think that we're just kind of a bunch of, frilly frou-frou, tree hugging, recycling people with our heads in the clouds, the work that we do will be hampered by the fact that they're not taking us seriously. That's why I was so excited about the possibility of having a ecosystem builder certification. It's old school, yeah. We're bowing to the man, yeah. But you know, we have to speak the language, I think, of economics if we're going to be able to impact this. Because you know, we need people who don't necessarily believe everything that we believe to be successful. That's the truth. So I think we have to have something that appeals to the way that people who are not already here drinking the Kool-Aid like we do, that appeals to their senses and their values and their logic.
Yeah, but so Kate, Kauffman Foundation and IEDC is in the process of actually developing that certification.
Great.
So in theory, I mean, that's sort of like done or will be done because it's already, I mean, Kauffman gave IEDC a grant to do it. And so
I think it's a process, but it's not done until we have a statistically significant community that is certified. That's when it's done. Right now, they're just getting the tools together to do it.
We're digressing a bit, but I just want to insert this, I guess, for the recording. It's a little frustrating for me that EIDC, whatever it is, the acronyms are, they seem to be doing this in a vacuum, or maybe Andy, you can share that they're actually talking with actual ecosystem builders and developing this thing.
I can just give it a little bit. We don't have to go too deep here. The answer is they're developing a certification for entrepreneur-led economic development, and it is being actually done with IEDC and SourceLink. That obviously falls directly in the field of economic development, and it would obviously really be targeted at people that work in economic development.
Right.
So it's not what we're looking for exactly.
Well, it just depends on it depends on what we're looking for. That's partially why this vision is really important, because everybody's looking for different things. But it certainly, if you are in a traditional economic development field, IEDC is the definitive certification body. And I don't think ecosystem building is one class, given how much you have to know, but certainly it is a step on a pathway towards more education for folks that are in the economic development industry or sector that they can leverage. But the way I think about it is ecosystem builders come from a dozen different sectors, and that is just one. But you know, you also have folks at Main Street and Startup Champions Network and NBIA who are different but related sectors who are also developing training and programs and certification-ish things. And part of the challenge is that everybody comes from different sectors. You don't need a degree or a title to be an ecosystem builder. You just have to care enough, and you have to think on a systems level. And you have to lead in a certain way. And so why this vision is so important is because you know, the core fundamental question of ecosystem building is, how do you lead when no one's in charge? Like, that's it. It boils down to that question. And so that is both on a individual community level, but it is also on a field level. So a lot of the thinking, and a number of you on the call were in these conversations way deeper than I was, so please chime in. I'm just parroting what you all said, which is, without a shared vision that we can sort of build consensus and collective buy-in to, all the many pieces of the universe that focus on building ecosystems more and more, especially after the COVID thing, will disperse into the wild and not talk to each other. Because if I just went to 5 people in the ESHIP Summit and they said, why do you do what you do? And we did that. We watch the video if you want that. You will literally get 5 different answers. And some people will say to me with much passion and gusto, the reason we do this is job creation. This is all that matters. And then someone will say to me, I don't care about jobs. I just want to make sure people in my community have access and opportunity to wealth creation. And then the next person will say, well, I just want there to be cool restaurants on Main Street. And they will all be correct. And so what is the vision that all those people can say, you know what, that's the moon, and I'm going to work on my part of it to get us there. And what is the collective consensus around the heart of the matter? And can we capture it in a thing where people say, I want to get on that ship based on that? And it's really challenging. It's why it seems straightforward. Like, when someone just write a draft for the field, And then as you get into it, you're like, oh my goodness. And I just want to reemphasize what was said earlier. I should not write it. The Kauffman Foundation should not write it. We're smarter than that. But we want to, again, create the process that allows collaboration for a bunch of smart minds, just like on this call, to put their brain on this question. And our next opportunity, COVID virus permitting, is to really open this up to a couple, I mean, potentially 500 people, to do another round of input. We've done 3 years of input, and it's in that sandbox document. And a lot of you have put way more time into this than I have. So I don't want to, I know it sometimes, because I work for the Kauffman Foundation, it seems like I know what's going on. I'm trying to make sense of it too. And that's the vantage point that I see. Maybe it seems like I should know, but everything's a draft and there's no answer with the Kauffman Foundation, as I've said multiple times.
Too bad you can't fit all that on a t-shirt, Andy.
Gotta be a hell of a t-shirt. Just like but I think you're all touching on the things exactly on this call that's like, oh yeah, this is really good. Like I couldn't stop taking notes if you look at the note page, because I was like, yeah, this is, just keep going. So now I'm gonna shut up and let you keep going. Let me say one more thing. Sorry, I'm just gonna contradict myself. I'm gonna answer the question I said I was gonna tell you earlier that Mike asked me when you kind of called me into this, which is what is going on with the ESHIP Summit and what is our opportunity? And I can lay it out pretty clear. I think we've got to a conclusion. The ESHIP Summit is currently scheduled for June 29th through July 2nd in Kansas City. Obviously, there's a situation that we're monitoring on a daily basis to see if that's even possible, because we would need to announce the thing basically in April. There is a new, as I was said on the call last time, but I'll reiterate in case everyone was here. We are taking a new approach to this year's summit. So all of the work that we've been doing around building the professional field of ecosystem building, it used to be the primary kind of role of the summit. And then you would come to the summit, you'd also learn and get things that you could take back home. We're gonna take all the field building work, which is really the ESHIP goals, and we're gonna condense it into a single day on the first day of the summit. And it's actually gonna be marketed as a pre-summit event. I'm gonna explain that in a second, but we're basically calling it ESHIP Goal Hackathon, and I'll explain that in a second. The main event, based on a lot of feedback and a lot of input from folks, we're gonna actually try to evolve into a delegation model or a community delegation model and invite people to attend as part of a delegation from their communities. So you can attend either as, say, a group of folks from Chicago, or we also, folks that are resource providers for ecosystem builders on the NRP group will also just attend as resource providers. But we're actually gonna create space so communities can come together. People have already been doing this organically. Bring a group of people from your community, think about it inclusively, a set of leaders, hopefully a small group, not 1 million folks, and actually use space at the summit to develop a plan of a way this group will go back home and work on some aspect of their ecosystem. So we're trying to develop ways that people can have conversations, work together, develop a plan, actually do work together to develop the plan, and go home and implement that plan. It will actually feel very similar, I think, except for instead of attending alone, you'd actually come with at least one other person from your community, up to probably, I think, 14 is the number we said for a delegation limit. So that'll be the main part of the summit. I'm happy to talk more about that if you want, but might be beyond the nature of this call. But the thing that matters to folks on this call is that on the first day of the summit, this ESHIP Goal Hackathon, we have a full day for those who want to build the field or contribute to building the field, like all of you have done in the past of the event. We're actually just gonna work on the 7 goals. We actually are gonna bring in the folks from the strategic doing group, if you've heard of this, to actually provide a bit more of a clear process to help people, how do you do complex collaboration around the goals? But we're actually, so that'll be in the afternoon, let people divide into small groups, kind of like we did last year, but actually there's a process, a lot more guide rails on how groups can do that and what they're supposed to do after. I'll get into that later. But in the morning, we're gonna focus on basically 2 big questions. We're gonna focus on a field-wide vision, and we're gonna focus on, which in the ESHIP goals is 3.1, which is what this group's about. And we're actually gonna focus on what we call 4.5 and 4.6, which is some sort of governance body, standards body, center of excellence, and a network of NRPs to support ecosystem building. So we're actually gonna work as a whole group on those 2 things together, and then divide into small teams if people wanna work on other goals, because small teams are more appropriate there. So what I'm saying in short is that whatever this group creates, we will have at least an hour, perhaps longer, perhaps an hour and a half, to do whatever we wanna do with whatever this team produces in terms of a draft vision. And Mike's team at the Value Web and all the folks there are going to help us create a process with you all to figure out what we will do with the draft. But the role of this team is to really get to a draft so that we're not starting with a blank piece of paper, and really incorporating as much as we can and gather as much information as we can to help the collective do that. The good news is that's what Valuable is really good at, which is servicing collective intent.
So Andy, is all this detail about the event, is that available already on the website, or is that?
No, because it's not yet. It will be in April. The question is simply, are we going to actually be able to hold the event in June? With the COVID virus? We were supposed to launch this week for reasons that should be obvious. Probably shouldn't launch an event in the middle of a pandemic. I'm happy to send you a little more if that's helpful, but we're just holding right now until we see how this thing plays out. If you ask me honestly, I have a hunch, a suspicion that events will not be happening in June given the COVID situation. So we would have to obviously postpone, which may give this group a little bit more time, but let's just assume that everything works great and things and the virus is not as bad as some people predict, and that we will be able to gather again in June, but I just don't know. But we're moving forward as if things are, and then we'll actually make a decision next week based on whatever data happens in the next 7 days to see if we need to postpone.
So I'll just really quickly, Andy, super quick point, Peter, sorry. Just that whether it's in June or later or in person, I think there's, a couple things that are true no matter what, in particular for the work of this call. And so no matter how it happens or when it happens, the work of having a draft vision and having engaged lots of people in that and starting to build energy towards something that people are becoming more conversant and literate with exactly the things that we're all working through is still the goal, I think, either way.
Yeah, and actually, one thing, and this is just a suggestion, and you probably thought of it, Andy, but thing to consider is that irrespective of what date you pick on, you just actually announce the format anyway. So that, whatever it is, even if it's undetermined, you say, look, we're not sure when the meeting's going to happen, but when it happens, here's the format.
Yeah, because it's new. Yeah,
I think that would actually be really helpful in getting interest down the road anyway. So,
and we're also, obviously it's a change that we, like I said, people are organically doing it. It's going to take time to sort of understand and recruit and put stuff together. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I will say, I think the notion of this vision for the field is incredibly central to everything that's happening around building the professional field and the ESHIP goals. I would say, given the current crisis, it's like even more, I think it actually accelerates the need for a clear vision to see beyond the COVID outcome.
For sure.
This group is super, it's interesting because some of my meetings, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to have this meeting right now because I'm not sure if it's relevant to the current situation. When this is on my calendar, it's actually, I think it's more even relevant than it was 2 weeks ago because if we can land something at, in June or whatever day is that helps people organize and understand what they have to do to help their economies and communities recover, it's going to be driven by whatever vision this group starts as a draft.
Yeah, and then on the point of vision, I think it would, maybe it's useful, maybe in my mind it would be useful to have a 1A and 1B. So the 1A is, here's the vision for the field. And then to Katie's point, here's the vision for the entrepreneurship ecosystem builder. And I think that those are distinguishable. Here's the great, this is what an ecosystem looks like and when it's built out and so forth. But then also here's our place and role in helping to move that along. And what's the vision for the person doing that? I think that, because we keep flipping back and forth. Is this about the builder or is this about the built environment or the to be built environment or the discovered environment? Going back to my argument that you don't build ecosystems, that you find them and then you support them. But either way, I think maybe, because I think we keep going back and forth, and I'm just thinking maybe we just do both.
I like that. I think that clarifies things a lot.
Do you think, we're kind of running up on the end of our time together, I think, but do you think we could ask each of you to send in your end state description for both of those, as well as your answer to why you do what you do?
So you want to send the in-state description for the community or the in-state description for us?
Both.
Okay.
It might help to, or I'm happy to, could we like, be possible to sort of email us those questions or maybe put it in Slack or something, just so we can make sure that we're all answering the same question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope I don't divert things. I mean, I'm just hoping that, because we keep going back and forth, I'm just thinking, and we may merge them anyway. It's just, maybe if we treat them as separate questions, that we can find that they're actually the same. But
So can I say that instead of having all these emails and Slack being like there's so many different threads, that if we work on that sandbox document and put a header and then just add yours, we can have it all concisely in one location instead of trying to scroll through stuff to capture it. That would be great. Thanks for putting in the video. That's inspirational. And I will add that to the sandbox document so that if we need a little refresher on why some of us do what we do, you can watch that and go from there.
Katie, you're in that. A couple of you are in it actually. Now that I looked at the whole.
Right.
If you have a rough moment later, or you've spent too much time on social media, just go watch that video because it really reassures you that the world is going to be okay because you are.
So we've got 3 minutes. I want to be mindful of time, and can we? So next steps are. If we put the questions into the sandbox document, and then can we look and answer that, each of us? What else do we need to do, Mike, Tiffany, Beth?
Who will put it in the sandbox document? I guess would be my question, just to make sure you have that.
I can do that.
Okay. And then you're going to put a note in Slack when that's done, and we can all just go in and put our thing. I also will say I took extensive notes because y'all were just putting out gold there. So it may be worth, if you obviously you could go watch the recording, but I put that in there. I think there are a lot of really interesting thoughts that are worth really thinking about that I tried to capture. If I didn't appropriately capture your comment or it's not clear, I was going quick. So feel free to add other thoughts you might have had around that conversation because I thought it was really, really rich.
You want to get a curveball at the end?
Sure. We got 1 minute left. Good
So
time.
one question that has been one of the kind of the hardest and the findings that took us longest is the notion between an ecosystem builder as an individual versus an organization. So just a thought for everyone, is that the same or are those two separate things? And if so, how does a description for a organization form ecosystem builder looks like?
It's interesting. Add that to your notes in the little 2 questions thing we're going to do because I think that's a very good one.
Great. Okay. I'm going to end the meeting because we're hopping off into another meeting. Thank you, everybody. I'll upload this video to the dashboard and stay safe, wash hands. We'll talk soon.
Be good, everybody. Thank you.
Video
Bye.
to pick me up. All right. See ya.
Bye.
Everyone.